Since our new members at Journey may not know much about our Zimbabwe ministry, let me take a few minutes just to outline it for you. Way back in 1970s, Marietta Clark was one of our Northside Church of Christ college students. Northside was one of the two predecessor churches for Journey Christian Church. Well, Marietta was studying at Harding Christian University in Arkansas, which was and still is an excellent Christian mission-oriented university. There she met a handsome young man named Robert Reese, who was the son of an American missionary family in Zimbabwe. Well, in due course, they were married and decided to return to Zimbabwe as missionaries. So in 1980, with a new baby in tow, they headed off to Zimbabwe. Well, after about 20 very successful years in the field and raising their family of 3 children, Robert and Marietta returned to the United States in 2001. And Robert now teaches in a Christian university in Knoxville, Tennessee. However, every summer that it's possible to do so, Robert spends several weeks in Zimbabwe continuing to support the Zimbabwe church ministry. The 41 years of Journey's involvement in Zimbabwe have been, and they continue to be, violent and turbulent years for the people of Zimbabwe. Well, with the HIV, AIDS, and COVID pandemics added to the political and economic problems in the country during the years since 2008, life has not improved in Zimbabwe. It's only gotten worse. So in spite of this huge challenge in the country, what really has been accomplished by the Zimbabwe ministry during the last 40 years? Well, here's just a few highlights. Number 1, over 40 new congregations of the church have been successfully established through the urban and remote parts of southern Zimbabwe. The beginning of many of the new churches can only be explained by the grace of God intervening in the ministry. For example, in one case, a man from a remote village began attending a church revival meeting that Robert and others were conducting in Bulawayo. Now, he was somewhat drunk during the first visit, and it turned out that he had a reputation for being that way quite often. One evening, he confessed Christ and was baptized. He then returned to his village. About 2 months later, he showed up again in Bulawayo saying he had started a church in his village and wanted Robert and others to come up and preach to it. Well, they were a bit reluctant, but they decided to go with him back to his village. And when they arrived, much to their surprise, there were over 40 people ready to hear them. I understand that one man said something like, "If Jesus can change a man like him, then I want to know more about Jesus." Now, to support growth throughout the country, many evangelistic and leadership training programs were conducted in both villages and urban churches. Here's a photo of our last Journey mission trip illustrating the type of meeting and teaching at the farmhouse of Philip Niandoro, one of the pastors from Bulawayo. Now, you may recognize the other preacher. Over 400 local language Bibles, which the Bill Cliff Fund that Journey provided, were distributed with these training programs. In addition, Journey helped 3 pastors complete Bible college training programs to help them in their leadership training roles. Now, in addition to prayer support and what has already been mentioned, what have we at Journey done to contribute to this ministry? Well, here's just a few things. 1, we were the primary source of funds to build the original Nkulamandi church building, and we currently are funding the new Journey Education Center for them as well. You noticed it's been named after Journey Church. It's expected that the cost of finishing the Journey Center has increased by about $4,000 over its original $14,000 budget, and we hope to handle that shortfall for the project as the funds are needed. Several times during the last few years, we've provided truckloads, literally truckloads, of planting seeds for rural church members who lost their crops due to excessive rain or more recently due to famine and drought. They and their families would have been very hungry without our help for them to replant their crops. In addition, we provided $800 monthly support for Pastor Emmanuel Molly, who was partially crippled several years ago in a truck accident while delivering seeds to the rural church members when their own crops had failed. And finally, during the last 20 years, we've joined Robert on 5 of his trips to Zimbabwe with our own Journey mission teams. Now, each trip has been a wonderful mission experience for everyone who's participated, and they've been greatly appreciated by the churches in Zimbabwe. Now, in addition to our primary focus on broad-based church growth and development, we also have added 3 other Christian ministries to our Zimbabwe outreach. I will mention them very briefly. First is Hope for the Orphan. This is a near-orphan program designed to help children and their caregivers who are in great need. Hope for the Orphan ministry provides food, medical assistance, school expenses, and weekly Christian training for both the children and the caregivers. It always is a wonderful part of our mission trips to spend a day teaching, eating, and playing with the children and caregivers in the program. The next mission is the Kaelia Children's Village. This is a Christian, live-in, rural farm setting for true orphans or wards of the state. At the moment, there are about 45 children living at KCV. Journey has helped KCV by funding its very large fruit tree orchard that is now almost fully grown. We've helped by upgrading its water wells, by purchasing several cows for its dairy operations, along with helping to purchase several pieces of farm equipment. Finally, I want to talk about the Precious Life Ministry. Many poor women often find themselves in desperate situations, particularly if they have children. This has led to a large number of women simply abandoning their babies in the fields, hoping and praying that some will be found before they die. Agnes Coenda and her husband found such a baby and ultimately adopted it as their own. They were so taken by the experience that they began the Precious Life Ministry to help desperate women either train for urban-type jobs, cooking, hairdressing, sewing, etc., or learning farming skills in order to provide for themselves and their children back in their own village. All of this is to say God has greatly blessed the Journey Zimbabwe ministry during the last 40 very challenging years in Zimbabwe. We continue to be committed to the ministry, and we want to thank everyone at Journey who has so generously supported it in the past. Whatever funds are donated to the ministry as part of this year's Christmas gift programs will be divided equally between the Nkulamande building project and all 3 of the other ministries I've mentioned this morning. Thank you all, and God bless you all.